edition of the Weightlifting World Podcast. Today we're joined all the way from New Zealand by a man that holds basically all the New Zealand records in 77, 85 and 94 kilo classes and leads the New Zealand Sinclair rankings. He's a two-time Olympian, a Commonwealth Games silver medalist and a multiple-time Oceania champion. Welcome, Richie Patterson. Hi Richie, how are you?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me along.
Oh good, thank you for joining us. Thank you very, very much. So I guess what we'll do, we'll just get straight into the interview. Just tell us a little bit about your childhood, a little bit about growing up in New Zealand.
I guess the best way to start off is I grew up on a dairy farm, not really close to anywhere, about half an hour closest town or closest shops was half an hour away. So grew up feeding calves and working on the farm. When I was 13, moved to boarding school at Auckland Grammar. From there, I was an avid sort of rugby cricket player.
Yeah.
I got introduced to weightlifting at the age of 15 in order to increase my size and power for rugby on the rugby field, and basically went from there. Yeah.
What position did you play in rugby?
I started off, I was a midfielder in the centres, then did weightlifting to get bigger for rugby, but unfortunately I didn't get any bigger, so I ended up having to go into the scrum half in my later years of rugby before I gave that away.
And of course, given how culturally pervasive rugby is in New Zealand, do you find that quite a few of the Kiwi weightlifters have come from a rugby background?
I think most of us in New Zealand have played rugby at some stage when we were younger, and it's not necessarily that they've got into weightlifting through that. It's usually the exposure through a coach or through school that's got us into weightlifting. Yeah. But in general, I think almost every kid's played rugby at some stage.
Yeah. And you say you grew up on a dairy farm, so did you drink a lot of milk growing up?
Yeah. We used to go get the milk out of the vat, as you couldn't get it any fresher, so good quality, you'd say.
Yeah, for sure. And so you played rugby, you played cricket, you started weightlifting at 15, and who was the coach that introduced you to weightlifting?
Well, first thing I saw was actually a demonstration on stage. My school the weightlifting club at my school put on a demonstration, and I got into weightlifting. There wasn't really a coach there. It was just a bunch of guys that did snatch and clean and jerk. And then the following year we had a new coach or a new teacher come into school, and he walked across stage and they listed his interest as powerlifting. And being young, all I heard was lifting. So I went and approached him and said, I need a coach. And Mike Reed, and he came back to me and said, I don't really know too much about Olympic lifting, but I'm willing to learn at the same rate you are. So that's where we started.
That's nice.
Bench press, deadlift and squat, and some overhead squats, and then learn how to snatch with it.
Wow.
Fantastic.
And do you still have contact with him?
Yeah. Mike Reed is the current president of New Zealand Olympic Weightlifting now, so
wow.
We both involved. I'm vice president and he's president.
Isn't that amazing? What an amazing story. So just sort of tell us a little bit about your memories of this early time in your development as you were learning about weightlifting, as he was learning about weightlifting, and how you developed in that period.
Well, it was really trial and error. I just came in, and you'd say it was the schoolboy approach to the Bulgarian method.
Yeah.
Just go down and lift as heavy as you can every time you go into the gym. I also used to go down to a local weightlifting club called Gillies Weightlifting. It was kind of the home of New Zealand weightlifting. And at that time, Nigel Avery was training for the KL. That was just when I started training. And he was also training through to the Sydney Olympics. And I used to go down in the afternoons after school and actually just watch.
Yeah.
We had the New Zealand senior team training there. So I learned a lot by just watching these seniors train, really.
Yeah. And was Nigel Avery someone you looked up to as you developed, or were there other international lifters that you looked up to?
Well, to be honest, I didn't know anything about weightlifting, there wasn't social media, there wasn't Facebook or anything like there is now.
Yeah.
So really, Nigel was my first person that I knew that had gone to the international stage. So I saw his videos of him lifting in Sydney at the Sydney Olympics, and that was the first point where I went, wow, there's actually an avenue here to become an Olympian or someone to follow in the footsteps of. And Nigel was what I believe the first sort of person or first weightlifter in New Zealand to really take a really professional approach to it. There wasn't too many people taking weightlifting that seriously. They were kind of combining it with their jobs and getting by. Yeah. But Nigel really took on a full-time aspect to be the best he could. He was a very talented athlete, and he took full advantage of it. He set himself up and gave himself the best opportunity. So it was a great sort of role model or lead to have in.
Yes, and as you say, obviously you started off, and I guess it was a lot of trial and error and things of that nature. And looking back now, were there any things that you kind of stumbled on that you realise in hindsight were particularly correct, and anything that you look back in hindsight and realise was a big mistake?
Well, I guess I'm a coach now, as well as I'm still training, but I'm still coaching, and I'm applying a lot of things to my athletes or my younger athletes that are just learning that I wish I learned from day one.
Yeah.
So it's nice. I'm coaching in retrospect, you'd say.
What kind of things?
Just like the rhythm of your lifting. Like weightlifting's not all about maximal strength and how high you can pull the bar. Yeah. It's a lot to do with positions of the body and mobility and flexibility and balance, and there's so many greater aspects to Olympic lifting than being strong and powerful, and if I can teach the younger kids to appreciate it, that it's quite an art form, you'd say.
Yeah.
It's the understanding of what's going on with the movements. I was never taught the understanding. I was taught this is how we do it, but I was never taught why we do it like this. So now I'm taking that approach.
From an outsider's point of view, that's always the sort of reaction that I think any weightlifter gets.
At what point in this period in your early development did you make that leap, I guess, from someone who was kind of self-teaching, grabbing what you could from other people? What was the pivotal moment that kind of set you on this path to becoming a successful international lifter?
I guess it was when I turned 18. I'd seen, I was training obviously still at school, and I'd broken a number of national age group records under 16, under 18, and I really saw there was an avenue for me in this. And I really, I was always dreaming of being an All Black, as every kid was, and then all of a sudden my goal switched to becoming an Olympian.
Yeah.
I was watching and then I was like, there's an avenue, I'm good at this, I should pursue this. So I set in place when I was 18. The hard thing, I actually tried to quit my first 15 rugby team halfway through the season, and it doesn't go down very well in New Zealand. But as soon as I told my coach that this doesn't interest me anymore, I finally started actually making plans. So I enrolled myself into a coaching degree.
Okay.
I set myself up with the New Zealand coach at the time, which was Nigel's coach, Richard Dryden. So that's when I moved from my school coach to the national coach.
Okay.
And I set myself some targets. So the first one was to attend the Melbourne Commonwealth Games. Then I had my set on the Beijing Olympics, and then to try win the 2010 Commonwealth Games. So when I was 18, I basically set out my athletic career based on those Commonwealth and Olympic cycles.
Yeah.
When you first went to Nigel's coach, how were you received by him? Was he sort of with open arms, or did he go, well, maybe?
I can't actually remember, to be honest. I was quite eager, so I was very I'm really keen to do this. Let's go, and being young and full of energy, and all I can remember is sort of a transition period from going to school, and then all of a sudden I had this thing called a program that I had to follow, and this thing called technique that was quite useful, and that was probably my first actual proper learning stage from being a schoolboy into actually training like a weightlifter properly.
Yeah. I think you did miss out though, because Richie Patterson sounds like a perfect All Black name.
Pretty close to the McCall, but yeah. Unfortunately, when I was at school, I was only weighing 67 kilos, and I think the next lightest guy in my rugby team was about 90, so I was just getting it handed to me every time, so it's not so nice.
That's quite a challenge. So you said you won your first national junior championships about age 16, did you say?
Yeah, I broke the New Zealand under 16 records in my second year of weightlifting.
Okay.
And then progressed to the New Zealand under 18 records, and then the New Zealand under 20 records, and onto the senior ranks. Yeah.
And when did you win your first national championship?
Senior championship?
Yeah, that's a senior, yeah.
The year that I was turning 19. So as soon as I switched coaches, that was my first year of winning a national championship. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what year was that?
It would have been 2003.
Okay.
Yeah, about 2002, 2003.
Okay, so basically you made that jump, you won that first championship, and you then competed a couple of years later in 2005 in your first World Championship. Just take us through your memories of that first World Championship. I guess in a way that'd be bittersweet in a sense.
Yeah, it's, we used the 2005 World Champs as a sort of a competition experience leading into the 2006 Commonwealth Games. So flew up to Doha, and I'd actually been training for about 3 months prior to that with quite a lot of back issues.
Yeah.
I've been seeing a physiotherapist and a chiropractor and everything, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong. I just kept getting a lot of pain down my back, and went over to Doha and ended up bombing, which is a long flight, and my first major international to bomb. It's not a very nice experience at all.
No, I bet.
I came back to New Zealand and went and saw an osteopath, and he looked at me straight away and said, "Oh, you popped your rib out, and it's been out for about 4 months now." Okay. So it's very comfortable to lift with that. He popped it back in, and about 5 minutes later I went back to training and I was fine. So it was a bit frustrating, but as on the world stage, I was just basically gritting my teeth and lifting with it. But I look back on that as a learning experience, and whenever my young lifters bomb at a local meet and they get all down about it, I tell them, well, I travelled halfway around the world to bomb, so don't worry about it. Yeah.
And at this time, what was your training like? What was the structure of your training? You know, how many days a week? What kind of frequency? What kind of volumes, intensities, and so on?
The first structure I went under was New Zealand has been heavily influenced by East German coaches' coaching methods. So a lot of periodized programming, volume squats, volume pulls, assistance, and then transitioning through to more of a competition phase in your last sort of 4 weeks.
Okay.
And then competing on it. So my first sort of programmed weightlifting structure for the first 3 to 4 years of my senior weightlifting was based around that.
Yeah.
A lot of volume and squat. So I put on a lot of strength. I think when I left school, I went from a 95 kilo snatch and a 115 clean and jerk was my best school results. And then 2 years later, I was snatching 127 and clean and jerking 150. So there was a rapid improvement rate being programmed like that.
So just for the listeners, just sort of break down, when you talk about volume squats and volume pulls, just kind of break that down into the kind of nuts and bolts of what it actually means.
So when you do sort of a prep phase, you'd be doing more emphasis on the squats and pulls. So we would be doing percentage-wise heavier pulls, maybe 110, 120%. You're doing 5s and 3s, doing a lot of volume to build up this big base, which you're going to therefore, the next phase, you transition, you go to sort of 3s, 2s, and 1s and maximize that base strength.
Yeah. And
then you do transition into power, which is doing your Olympic movements. So starting to introduce your Olympic movements, maybe partials, power cleans, power snatches, snatches from weights, hangs, and then going into that final sort of competition peak phase, which is full Olympic movements. So your base stuff was, a lot of 5s, 3s at different stages during the year as well. Maybe early in the year you might be doing like long cycle squats, which you're getting up to your 12s and 15s and things like that.
Yeah. And in those early phases, are you literally doing no full classical lifts or just a very reduced volume?
There was those early stages when I was that age. There was very, very few full classic Olympic lifts at that stage. Yeah.
And how do you still follow any of that methodology, or has your philosophy changed at all?
Yeah, well, From 2007 on, I changed coaches again, and I was under Ari Moilanen from Finland.
Yeah.
And Ari Moilanen, I don't know if you know, but he's
Big Bulgarian man, yeah.
Yeah, he's very into the tea. And it was kind of a shock. Like, to be honest, I didn't actually know too much except the German system.
Yeah.
So then I get introduced to Ari, who's been appointed as my coach. We sent out some sent out a job application. He came down to New Zealand and he said, right, most numbers you're going to be doing now is kind of like 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And I had this huge strength base from all of this sort of base and German periodization that I actually responded really well at this point. It was almost like squeezing the final sort of drops out of the sponge.
Yeah.
So my results actually came up quite dramatically, and I actually found the training under the Bulgarian method more enjoyable because I constantly got to compete against myself every week. On the Friday we'd go max, and then I'd try personal best on power snatches and power cleans on my off days, and I really enjoyed it. I always felt like I was moving well and I got the rhythm.
Yeah.
So now as a coach, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to continue that sensation of the movement patterns, but with my younger lifters, that I'm giving volume and giving them sort of adaptation, building strength and connective tissue and all that sort of stuff, skeletal strength and base work. At the same time, I'm still making them do a lot of full Olympic lifts because I think it's very, very important because it establishes your rhythm and it establishes your technique that you just become so autonomous.
Yes.
That you can, once you transition out of your strength phase, you're starting to transfer that strength into your technique rather than having to start from scratch every sort of 8 weeks.
And do you think that was a kind of a limitation of the very strict East German approach that you had been using?
Yeah, I felt that it was a hit and miss. You either felt fantastic and you got it just right, or other times you went in to compete and you felt a little flat, or you peaked 2 weeks too early and then you felt flat again. So the Bulgarian method, I felt like I could hit probably pretty close within 5 kilos every week of what my maximal numbers are.
Yeah.
So if I could try to get that sensation of rhythm and connection to my technique, but also provide stages of growth and development for my athletes.
Yes.
Then I think that what I feel like is I'm doing everything that I wish I had been given, as I said, in retrospect, as an athlete.
And I mean, the perception of the Bulgarian method is that you go into the gym twice a day, you hit a max snatch, a max clean and jerk, maybe you hit a max front squat or squat or something. Is that kind of a naive way of looking at it? Is there more kind of complexity to it than that?
There's a bit of percentage work, but in all, it's really just learning to lift really, really efficiently under max load. So you become so efficient with your lifting, and you get very close to your strength levels. Under Ari, we trained hard, like really hard. Like I was training 7-8 hours a day, full-time training.
Yeah.
I was doing summer in New Zealand, summer in Finland, so year-round summer, and at one point, Ari was making me train 3 times per day. I'd train morning, train afternoon, go home, have dinner, then come back and do another training.
Yes.
And it was hard. It was really hard.
We're actually planning on going out to see Ari in around March next year, for a couple of weeks, just to kind of experience the system. So we'll see how we cope with it.
Yeah, he'll open your eyes as to how hard his athletes train.
Yes.
How did it affect you, sort of, in your energy levels outside the gym? Were you sort of so focused into that session that when you got back, nothing else really mattered, or did you really feel that you needed to just sleep? So it was just sort of sleep, train, and maybe eat.
It was literally that. 4 years of my life passed with eat, sleep, train. It's very, very draining. Like literally, you get home from the gym and all you want to do is hop in bed quickly because you know that you've got another session coming up tonight, and you might have 10 attempts at that 180 jerk, and then you got to sleep again, and it's all going to happen next week and the following week, and you're kind of hanging out for that deload week.
Yeah. So 2008 must have been a a high point in your career, winning your first Oceania Championships with some good numbers: 135, 175, and 310 at 85. On reflection now, how do you kind of view that victory?
I actually went into that. I weighed in, I think it was about 300 grams heavy over the 77 class at that Oceania Championships, because we were doing a tactical decision to try win the Oceanias and get 2 spots to the Beijing Olympics.
Okay.
So I actually weighed in the 85s, even though I was a 77 kilo lifter, to secure team points, because I saw myself as a good point scorer in the 85. So I won that in the class above. That was a good competition. Like, I was pretty happy, even though the lifts were a little rough, and I've got some videos of those. A good day still, and that was obviously the day that I found out that I'd finally become an Olympian. So
yes,
that was a nice day.
Yes, I mean, as you say, you weighed 77.8 on that day, and then come the actual Beijing Games, when you competed, you weighed 76.57. You lifted a little bit below. You snatched 130, 170 for a 300 total in the Beijing Games. Just kind of give us your memories of that whole Olympics, your memories of Beijing, the build up and so on, and how you felt about your performance.
So prior to Beijing, I was training in Finland. Went up to Finland, and that's when I was doing the 3 times per day training scenario. I did actually hit some pretty good numbers. In fact, I hit about 3 days out from my competition at the Olympics. So I snatched 135 pretty comfortably in the warm up and did 170. But then my rib was playing up again, so I actually had to go see my chiropractor. He was at the Olympics, luckily for me, and kind of saved me. And that's when I came out and dropped my openness down a little bit lower and had a bit of a rough day. But in terms of the whole Olympic experience, the New Zealand, to be an Olympian in New Zealand, it's very regarded, you'd say. There's very few, in terms of New Zealand weightlifting circles. At that time, there had only been 14 ever weightlifters to the Olympics to compete. Me and Mark Spooner were 15 and 16, and it was a very big privilege to join the names of like your John Boltons and your Tony Eberts and your Don Olivers, and there's a very good history in New Zealand weightlifting, so I was very proud to be part of that. Turning up, the New Zealand team, being a weightlifter and an individual, the New Zealand team really makes you feel like we're there as a team, and it's so unique, I feel, to New Zealand, that we turn up and they make it feel like the New Zealand backyard, and we have this big welcoming ceremony for our New Zealand. We usually get a sort of a band or a singer from New Zealand, sort of iconic, to welcome us in, and just make such a big deal of it. It's so awesome. It's such a buzz, but you can't explain it. It's so unique.
And what were your memories of China? Obviously, massively culturally different, I would imagine, from where you're from.
Yeah, so I think when you turn up to the Olympics, and when you're, especially in China, you see what they want you to see, and that's pretty much it. You could have been anywhere in the world, to be honest. You're at the Olympics and you're on the bus, and you go to and from the venue, and you see the athlete village, which is generally structured the same as every other athlete village you've been to. So it's very much the same.
Yeah.
But then after you compete, like, went to the Great Wall and to the silk markets and Tiananmen Square and got to see the sights. So the first part of the Olympics is really, you're so involved, and so you can't sleep, you can't do anything. It's all about the Olympic stage, and then finally afterwards, it's like you hit the relax button. That's quite nice. Yeah.
So what are your kind of, as a weightlifter who is the best in his country, the best in his region, one of the best in the Commonwealth and so on, so you're very used to going to championships and having the pressure on you to perform and medal and probably win. But then you come to an Olympic Games, and it's obviously a very different situation when you've got the literal elite from all the weightlifting superpowers in the world there. How is that different? How does that feel different? How does it affect how you enter the competition? All of those kind of things.
It's a good point you make there, actually. My first Olympics in the training hall is probably one of the most impressive sights, yet the most daunting sights I've ever been in. You're happily hitting your 130 kilo snatch on one platform, and then across you is your competitor hitting a 155, 160 snatch, and then all of a sudden you're sitting there going, do I really deserve to be here? You start questioning your ability. There's lots of things. So my first Olympics, I was actually a lot of those thoughts came into my mind, and what they call you, kind of your first Olympics, you're the Olympic tourist, they call you.
Yes.
You're so sitting there looking at everyone else training rather than focusing on your own training. It's something that I kind of got accustomed to. Then after the 2009 Worlds in Korea, I got more like comfortable in the environment and really just trying to show off my ability. You get from going to like, oh man, these guys are so strong, to okay, I'm going to show them how good I am. And then, so a good example is London. My squatting ability is quite above my lifting ability, you'd say.
Okay.
And I was front squatting 235 in London in the warm up in the training hall, and had a few guys I think I had the Bulgarian guy stop his training and have a watch, and then I had the Kazakhs all watching me, and then they were like, man, who's this guy? He's come out of nowhere. And then they saw me snatch and clean and jerk afterwards, and they were like, don't worry about him, he's just joking. Just pulling my finger, thinking I could do clean and jerk. Yeah.
Some powerlifters walked into the water room.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
One thing to remember about Beijing is you did beat Tanis Agir, because he did bomb. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, thanks.
Just looking at that kind of lineup in Beijing.
Some amazing lifters.
You know, some of the top Koreans, Li Hongli of China, Oleg Perpechenov, all in that kind of, you're in that company, Krzysztof Stramiak of Poland.
That must have been a pretty amazing experience. I mean, I don't know, maybe some of those names certainly weren't really well known before that, but when you're lifting amongst them, can you sort of pull a bit of strength out of them? Do you look at them and think, well, that's pretty cool?
I think being in that environment, it just lifts you. Like, I don't know. I guess it's part of being an athlete, and those that go to the top level, they're always wanting to show off.
Yeah.
The best athletes are show offs. So even though you're in that environment, you're like, okay, I want to show him how much I can power clean, or I want to show him how fast I am as well, and it really spurs you on to be impressive. You don't want to sit there in the background and be a wallflower, that's for sure.
Sure.
And do you feel that, when you're in that situation, I guess my feeling would almost be that I'd kind of feel like I was there and I was just kind of going through the motions, almost like a training session. But did you really feel like you were actually competing for a place? Did you feel like, I mean, obviously you placed 21st at that games, but did you feel like you were trying to place 20th or 19th?
I had initial goals of the weights that I'd like to achieve and the placings. New Zealand, it's quite highly ranked that to be selected for the Olympic Games, they'll look at your ability to place in the top 16.
Okay.
So my goal leading into Beijing was to meet that expectation that they'd selected me, that I could produce that top 16 ranking. Unfortunately, I didn't have such a good day, so it dropped me back into that 21st position. But my goal was that top 16 ranking.
Okay. So, as you say, the next year, 2009 World Championships, I believe it was at that competition you put in what was then your best ever competitive total, 144, 178, 322. So you, as you mentioned earlier, you'd become more confident in that kind of company. Was that the reason why you were able to lift some bigger weights, or was it actually the increase in body weight?
It was definitely the increase in body weight.
Okay.
Going from 77 up to 85, my lifts went up. I think that year I actually had my best in competition was a 150 snatch, and I clean and jerked. I cleaned 200 that year in 2009. So it definitely followed with the body weight increase.
Yeah. And your memories of that championship?
that was quite good. Again, I flew up to Finland prior to that and spent training camp up with Ari. I was actually up there for about 5 months.
Yes.
And then on the way back, I flew back through Korea and competed. And again, I was more confident on that stage. That's probably my best experience on a world platform. I felt the most confident at that point.
Yeah.
Leading in the year after the Olympics. The Olympics was such a pressure moment. Like, there was so much riding on my first Olympics, don't mess this up, so many things like that, to like going back to the world stage and going, okay, this is the world's, it's fine, you're good, you've done this before you deal with it.
Yeah. And just moving forward another year, obviously that was the 2010 Delhi Commonwealth Games. It's interesting, we spoke a couple of nights ago to a Canadian lifter, Marie-Yves Beauchemin-Nadeau, and she was saying that actually in Canada the Commonwealth Games are really relatively unknown, and for her it wasn't really an enormous competition. Is that different in New Zealand?
Yeah, it is. To be honest, if you got a gold medal at the Commonwealth Games, it's probably looked highly upon on equal terms to being a world champion.
Oh, really?
It's got such a big following with the public, and it really gets big media attention over here. So, Commonwealth Games is a big deal, especially to New Zealand weightlifters. Yeah.
Yeah. So once again, just talk us through that championship. I mean, obviously we heard kind of the horror stories that were publicised and probably over publicised in our press. You know, things like Athlete Village not being finished, wild animals in the rooms, sewerage backing up. Obviously, we heard about the ceiling of the weightlifting hall collapsing a couple of days before the competition. Did you see any of that?
No, it was fine. There was, I think media was just trying to get a story out of something.
Yeah, that's what everyone says. That's what everyone says. Everyone we've spoken to said the same thing.
It was like you had the odd power cut, but nothing serious, nothing that you couldn't just deal with. Weightlifting was fantastic. There's no problems. I think it was just some hype, and then media, once they get it, they try to take it a little bit further than it needs to go.
Yeah, and obviously in that competition you were relatively narrowly beaten to second by Simplice Ribuem, who had obviously competed for Cameroon and then took up Australian, residency and representation. Did you feel that you could have won the gold that year?
Yeah, well, I led after the snatch on bodyweight with a 150 snatch, and he actually came in first on his clean and jerk and missed, and then I went out and missed mine as well. So that's I basically handed him this sort of controlling position.
Yeah.
In the clean and jerk, and I know Ruben, and I've competed against him numerous times, and he's very, very, very brutally strong.
Yeah.
So I knew that I couldn't kind of I did 181 and then I needed 183, and I was like, well, if I do 183, I'm basically going to hand it to him. So I took a big jump and tried to force him out to do a 340 total.
Yeah.
So I went up to 189, cleaned it, and then missed the jerk. So I really took a risk to try to put pressure on it. I was like an all or nothing lift, basically, for me.
Yeah.
To win the competition. So I took it in my own hands and put the pressure out there, and I missed it. So it's weightlifting.
And did you feel like you'd won silver or lost gold?
To be honest, straight away I felt like I lost the gold medal. I was in gold medal shape, and I'd hit big lifts prior to that, and I'd been pretty consistent with 190 kilos clean and jerks in competitions for the whole year, and it just didn't happen that day. So I was pretty disappointed, to be honest, and it's given me. I'm pretty determined to go to Glasgow and not let that happen again. Yes,
absolutely, and when you got back from that Commonwealth Games to New Zealand, was there significant media attention? Were you being recognised in the street at all, or anything like that?
Yeah, you'd say there's pretty good recognition from a silver medal at the Commonwealth Games. New Zealand, we really have to take advantage of these Olympic and Commonwealth years, because other than that, we get limited media coverage.
Yeah.
So there were some great stories to come out of it. My flatmate here, Stanislav Shalayev, he also got a silver medal.
Yeah.
So and me and him have been good friends since we both went to school together, and there's a good story behind that, and the media got on that, and So yeah, we got some really good media attention out of it.
Yeah. And so that was a 334 total. You also did exactly 334 with the exact same numbers at the Oceanias that year. So you were kind of ticking over it at the exact same rate, I guess. But you were saying that in other competitions you were doing bigger numbers. So just tell us, what are your actual competitive personal bests?
At 85 kilos, a 155 kilogram snatch and a 191 kilogram clean and jerk, which I did 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
And then in the 94s, my best is a 150 and a 193 clean and jerk.
Okay.
In competition.
And so I guess when you were doing 150, 184 at that time, were you happy with that, or was that a bit below your ability level, you felt?
It was always my openers. That was the problem. Again, say London, again, I 150 plus a mid-80s, and then I went 195 and cleaned it and then missed the jerk. So I'm always cleaning mid-90s but missing the jerk. So I've just got to convert that last over, and I'll jump my total up by about 10 kilos.
Yeah. So the London Olympics is 2012. You placed 14th, which, as you say, was in that kind of top 16 cut-off that the New Zealand Olympic Committee would like you to sit in. So that must have been very positive for you. You did 150, 186 for a 336, which I believe was your biggest number in an international kind of competition. Once again, take us through your memories of London, your build up to the competition, and kind of your feelings on your placing, and just generally what you felt about that period.
Okay. So after Delhi, basically, I didn't know where my weightlifting career was going. So that's when I started my own business and I actually took on a number of athletes at that point.
Yeah.
And I hadn't actually planned on going to London or pushing for London. I assumed my weightlifting career was going to be on hold or something. I don't know. I hadn't really thought past that because I put so much emphasis on winning the gold in Glasgow. I started coaching and then opened my own business, and then I started squeezing in a little bit of training just for fun, and then I thought I'd try my own methods because I didn't have a coach at this point, and I was like, okay, I'm going to try what I think would be the best weightlifting method, and I applied it, and then I came into the year of the Olympics, 2012, and early in the year I had a 155 snatch in competition, which was a 5 kilo PB, and I opened on a 190 clean and jerk in the 85s.
Wow.
And hit my 345, and I was like, well, this seems to work for me. So I was like, oh, well, let's have a go at the Olympics, and we went to the Oceania Champs, and we weren't ranked highly in the Oceania region to secure one of the Olympic spots through the continental qualification system.
Yeah.
There's a big story behind it. One of my teammates, Tavita, hurt his thigh earlier in the week. I saw him lifting, and he pulled out of a clean pretty bad, and then he at the end of the week, because we'd missed the cut-off time, verification of entries, and so he still had to lift for us to secure team points.
Yeah.
So he went out and lifted on basically one leg, secured a total which gave us enough team points where we actually secured an Olympic spot.
Yeah.
So 2012 was kind of like this is actually happening. I'm trialing my own methods and techniques and under my own sort of direction, and it's working, and I'm now going to get to go back to the Olympics and put it on the Olympic stage.
Yeah.
So run us through the Patterson technique system. How does it differ to the East German and the Bulgarian? Is it a blend of the two?
Yeah, it is. It's I sort of run off a 12-week scenario where the early stages, they're doing a lot more volume in terms of squats. They're doing I run a 3-week squat program, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 5x5, 5x3, 5x5, and it steps up each time, and then the following week you increase the numbers and you do 5x3, 5x5, 5x3, and then you go max. So every third week it's max 5, max 3, max single for squats.
Okay.
And then after that, we cycle back into a Bulgarian squatting method, which is just maximal squat, sort of up, down, up scenario, Bulgarian methods. So more weight on your back, but less volume as we peak towards competition. During the whole phase that I'm doing that, I decreased the intensity in my Olympic lifts over those volume periods, but I'm still doing my Olympic lifts.
Okay.
But I'll do them to where I feel comfortable and where I can maintain solid technique.
Yeah.
And then once I transition out of that, I become more aggressive on my Olympic lifts. And then on the last sort of 6-week phase, I'm just like really hammering tongs at the Bulgarian, really trying to push that up, which is where I'm doing at the moment before the Commonwealth champs in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then I'm applying a lot more bodybuilding, very Chinese orientated.
Okay.
I believe a lot more assistant strength can provide a lot more stability, a lot more confidence in your lifting, body awareness, gymnastics, just taking a well-rounded approach to being a better athlete, you'd say.
Yeah.
Does any of that sort of follow over from, I know these days you do quite a bit of CrossFit. Have you sort of gained any of the gymnastic sort of efforts from that?
Well, yeah, I'm actually... My partner, Pip, she's a weightlifter now. She's come from a CrossFit background, and she's doing actually pretty well. She's a 53, and she recently snatched in training 77 within 2 years of training. It's pretty impressive weight.
Yeah.
And she's obviously gymnastics orientated. After all the training sessions, they're doing a lot of movement patterns with keeping handstands and a lot of core conditioning and a lot of assistance. And another one of my young lifters, he's got a gymnastics background as well, and a really good body awareness and positions and mobility and understanding of his body. And so it's something that I think you can benefit from a lot. And it's not too difficult. It's fun. Breaks it up.
Yeah.
So just applying it to making everybody do it, basically.
Sure. Just tell us a little bit about the structure of New Zealand weightlifting as well, because I always find that very kind of fascinating to see how the different countries around the world organise weightlifting and how it's funded and this kind of stuff.
New Zealand weightlifting is in a growth stage. It was a very, very, very small organisation, very unique community of people that knew weightlifting, and those that were outside didn't know anything about weightlifting.
Yeah.
But now, with the growth of the sport, obviously, I think it's very similar in the UK, is the introduction of CrossFit and the publicity behind that and the exposure that the Olympic lifts and the exposure that the top level Olympic lifters in your country are getting to this general public audience.
Yes.
You're seeing a huge flow over from participation in local weightlifting competitions, identification of new talent through these processes. So what you're seeing now is potentially there was 3 major centres for weightlifting, which was Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch, and now we're getting a lot more little sort of satellite areas engaging in this through CrossFit and through CrossFit weightlifting clubs emerging.
Yeah.
So the landscape of New Zealand weightlifting is growing at a rapid rate, and just understanding and awareness of our sport in New Zealand is at a growth rate. It's really good.
What we're seeing, I guess, in the UK is that because of the growth of things like CrossFit, is that the English Championship, for example, there's a big swelling of the numbers lifting in and around that kind of middle range. The guys that are doing good enough numbers to get to the competition, but they're never going to win it. They're never going to go on to be elite lifters. And I guess in a sense, it's great for the sport, it's great for funding and this kind of stuff, but obviously it doesn't necessarily help you develop guys at the elite level. But where I see the real benefit is probably a generation's time, when these people's children start to come through, and you can see that these parents will be introducing their children to weightlifting relatively early. Obviously CrossFit's a big proponent of getting kids active and into CrossFit and weightlifting generally. Do you think that's going to be something you're going to see in New Zealand?
Yeah, I think you've hit it on the head there, is that we're approaching people that are middle-aged. They're probably not the most flexible because haven't been hitting full range movement since a young age, and learning the Olympic lifts when you're in the late 20s or early 30s isn't the easiest thing in the world.
Yes.
But their enthusiasm and like a scenario is that one's a school teacher, he's doing CrossFit, and he's got this kid that's running the 100 meters. He's 12 and he's really fast and stocky, and they think, wow, you'd be really good at weightlifting, because they know what weightlifting is through CrossFit, and they'll send them in your direction.
Yes.
Because they can see some talent there that they'd be good at weightlifting. So there's this broader approach that they can see weightlifting, and they want their kids to be good at weightlifting at a younger age, because potentially they're going to make them a better CrossFitter.
Yes.
And then you're going to get these kids that are exceptionally talented going, well, wait on, I can represent my country here in weightlifting, and following that avenue. So yeah, I think that is, you'll probably about 10 years from now, we'll have a huge influx of talented kids coming through. Sure. From the parenting.
Sure. So we're going to tie this up in a second, so we're going to let you get to bed. But just briefly, I mean, are there any particular kind of things outside of weightlifting that you're very passionate about, whether it be other pastimes or any particular kind of causes or charities you support, anything like that you'd like to talk about?
To be honest, my life has been so busy in the last couple of years with my gym. Like, I opened up my own CrossFit, to be honest. I met my partner, and I was actually coaching her. She wanted to get better at CrossFit. Yeah,
give it a plug. Give your gym a plug.
Functional Strength CrossFit in Auckland, on the North Shore. So the purpose of that is I run a weightlifting club out of that, which is Functional Strength Olympic. Our goal is to produce top international lifters. That's my goal, is to produce international lifters. And then on the other side of the wall, we've got a CrossFit, which is awesome. It's just it's added to the community feel of, like, the CrossFit thing is huge, and it's such a cool thing to be part of here. It's so passionate. But I've been so busy with that, and I'm running back injury prevention for workplace lifting. I run that during the week. So I work with businesses on how to lift safely, how to mobilize your body. So these guys that I'm working with at the moment, they all work on the roads lifting pipes and stuff, and they go home and they've got a sore back, and they have a beer and wake up and then go back and do it the next day. And I'm like, well, how can you stretch and how can you release your muscle groups by using lacrosse balls and all of these? So teaching them techniques as to how to look after their bodies. And so that's what I do during the week. And then on the weekend, I'm traveling all around the country doing weightlifting workshops with CrossFit athletes and rugby coaches, and so I'm pretty busy. Yeah, it's pretty good.
And do you find that the guys that are, as you say, like laying the pipes and this kind of stuff, do you feel they're more likely to pay attention to you coming in as an Olympian and a national weightlifting champion than if it was just the local kind of whatever health and safety person?
Well, that's why they approached me, actually, is that they thought, okay, who better to go with than someone that actually lifts weights for their life or for their profession. Yeah. They look after their back. So, and a lot of them know who I am. They rock in. They're like, oh, wait, that's that guy that went to the Olympics. And these are pretty big, staunch dudes, like big dudes. Yeah. And they start there and they don't talk to you for the first half an hour, and then at the end of it, they're rolling around on the ground on top of a tennis ball, laughing their guts off. So yeah, it's lots of fun, and breaking that down, and I really enjoy it, and I'm sure they get a lot out of it. It used to be Precious McKenzie used to run them. I think he still runs a few. And a number of the people that I've had through in the plus 50 category, they can remember the seminars that they did 20, 30 years ago with Precious. It just hasn't been repeated for the new generation workforce. So that's kind of where I'm stepping in.
All right, just briefly then, looking back over your career, your main regrets, if you have any, things you would have done differently, and also your career highlights.
No regrets. Like, I'm really happy. Like, it's I dreamed of being an Olympian, and I managed to achieve that twice. It's something that I'm very, very proud of. Commonwealth medalist, New Zealand records. So I've always wanted to be recognised as one of the best, and I always pegged myself against the records because that is the best in our country. Yeah. Nothing really. Like, I don't look at highlights for me. Definitely being selected at my first Olympics was very emotional. It was a sense of achievement. I think as a weightlifter, Olympic weightlifter, I would have felt like I hadn't accomplished what I'd set out to achieve had I not made that Olympics. Yeah. I've still got my career highlight. It's going to happen July next year. So just hanging on that one.
Okay. And just the best bit of advice you were ever given by a coach or by anyone, and also the best, or the couple of one or two bits of advice that you give to your lifters, or that you would give to a lifter generally.
Probably best. We had a Chinese coach come over to New Zealand. He was just visiting, and he rocked up to our gym one day, and he was actually the national women's coach for China. And his daughter was, I actually asked him, I said, what's the best way to do the Bulgarian method clean? And he said, you have to understand your body. You have to know when you are being lazy, and you have to know when you are overtrained. And he said, when you are being lazy, you must train harder, and when you're overtrained, you must go for a swim.
Okay.
And that's what I actually applied, because I was so driven that I knew I wasn't being lazy. I wanted it so bad that I knew it wasn't because I was lazy, that the days that it just didn't happen. So then I'd leave the gym and I'd come back the next day and hit it just as better, or if not better. And I felt my recovery methods or my recovery time got better by taking that advice. Advice that I give my athletes is just patience. Weightlifting is a sport of time under the barbell, and it's not going to happen in 2 weeks. So you've got to be patient, and you've got to put up with times where you're improving, and you've got to put up with times where you're stagnant for a while. It's just patience and persistence.
I mean, just talking to you, it really sounds like you're this super focused weightlifting guy. I just have to ask, there must be other things in your life other than weightlifting that you really enjoy, you really love. Do you still watch the rugby? Do you still watch cricket? Are you involved in any of these other sports? Are there any other hobbies that you have that just sort of take the edge off of a hardcore training guy?
It's hard to say no. I wish I could watch rugby games, and I wish I could. I was talking this morning, and I was writing programs all day, and then tomorrow I'm off coaching at a CrossFit comp with some of my athletes that are doing CrossFit, and then come Monday I'm training and coaching again, and Tuesday I'm training. Like, my life is weightlifting, and I love it. And
good.
And work isn't work if you love it.
Right.
Fair enough.
Absolutely right.
So just finish off, Richie, with a few plugs. If you've got a website, Facebook, Twitter, any sponsors that you have, any businesses that you're running, books you're writing, anything at all, just get them all in, all the plugs.
No, not too much happening, but just my business is Functional Strength. My Ollie Club's Functional Strength Olympic. I run weekend Olympic lifting workshops for CrossFits around the country, so if you want to get hold of me, visit our website, www.functionalstrength.co.nz. Just love the sport of weightlifting, love what you guys are doing and promoting it around the world. Love all the CrossFit people getting on board with it. Shed the love.
Brilliant, Richie. Look, we really appreciate you joining us. It's late out there, and we understand that and appreciate you giving us your time. We love weightlifting. You love weightlifting. So thank you so much for joining us today, and maybe catch up with you again at some point in the future.
Yeah,
maybe next year in July when you just won the gold.
Yes.
Hopefully you can have the first interview.
Brilliant. Cheers, Richie.
Thanks, Richie.
You take care, mate. Have a good night's sleep.
Bye, mate. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye, mate.
Ciao.